So the big ugly cry. What do I mean? Hey, it's Kathy Alessandra, your Yes, I Can coach. And today's topic is all about the big ugly cry. Why? Because I need to go back to my roots and I need to share a little bit. So let me explain what I'm talking about. The last couple of weeks, over a couple of weeks ago, I actually met up with my business coach and had a strategy session for closing out 2022 and moving into 2023. By the way, I firmly believe everybody needs a coach. Every coach should have a coach. And if your coach doesn't have a coach, question that. Anyway, so I was at a place where I was I'm working on the next year, reviewing this year, what worked, what didn't, what do I need to change, how are things going? And it's all areas of my life, right? Not just business. And what does that want to look like? What do I want that to look like in 2023? And as we were talking, this coach who I have worked with for years, Joy Chudikoff, a lot of years, we started talking about one of the original retreats where this actually all started. And I asked her to have her assistant go back and actually find the actual date of when that retreat was, when I had this massive breakdown, breakthrough, ugly cry that completely shifted and changed my life. And lo and behold, we're going into the 10th year of that. 10 years of Yes, I Can. I can't even begin to believe it. Although the big ugly cry did not reveal the Yes, I Can moment, but it revealed my personal Yes, I Can moment. So let me explain. So with this business coach, we were in a group program. And so we actually had regular retreats. And there were about 8 of us in it. And we had been together for a number of years, probably 3 or 4 years at this point. So we knew what was going on in each other's lives. It wasn't just business. It was the personal too, right? Because when you're that close with the group, when you're, seeing them monthly and retreating with them regularly, you got to have that conversation about all areas, right? And we were meeting in Santa Barbara, and it was the first day of the retreat, and it was time for everybody to come together and start sharing where they are, kind of do a check-in. And my turn came, and we were sitting in that circle. And as the first words started coming out of my mouth, the tears started pouring out of my heart. And it was one of the ugliest cries I've probably ever had in my life. You know, those cries where you are just sobbing, where you can't catch your breath, where you are heaving in agony as you are trying to share whatever it is, where you can't even speak and you really just want to lay on the ground and curl up in a ball and just make everything and everybody go away. Have you ever had one of those kind of cries? It's been a long time since I've had that ugly of a cry. And it was one of the hardest days of my life, having that cry and understanding where it was coming from and why. So let me explain that. When we got together, I started sharing, part of it was it was a really dark time. It was a super dark time in my life. My son was struggling with drug use at that time. And I was trying to save him. I was trying to fix him. I was trying to make it all better, right? And I was coming to the realization that there was nothing I could do to move him through that. My marriage was on the rocks, and I was trying to save that. I was trying to fix that. I was trying to make it work, right? What was the last ditch effort that I could, hopefully make this marriage of, at that point, probably 24, 25 years work? My business, my magazines were thriving. They were doing well, but I was questioning everything I was doing. Was I really meant to do it? And how was I meant to show up? And really, was I a success? Because I had this feeling that because I didn't have a college degree, that I really wasn't a successful woman. And so struggling and charging and all the things that go up in our heads with that. And my weight, I was at my highest place of my weight at about 220 some odd pounds, because I was literally taking everything I felt and stuffing it down my throat, right? I was pushing down the feelings of anxiety and fear and failure. I was pushing down the feelings of ambiguity, of not knowing, of failing and trying to save. I was pushing all of that down, eating my feelings, really, quite literally, as I was stuffing food down my throat, just trying to make things better. And in that moment, when I had that ugly cry and everything came pouring out, once I was able to actually catch my breath, right? I had one of the women look at me and say, I'm worried about you. You need to take some time for yourself. A couple of them actually. And in that moment, I realized I needed to stay in Santa Barbara. I needed to stay in Santa Barbara for another 24 hours, let them all go home. I needed to gather my thoughts and figure out what I was going to do and how I was going to change my life, right? I didn't want to continue to have this big, ugly cry, have these revelations that something needed to change, but not make the effort to make the change, right? I was hitting my bottom. I hit my bottom. I mean, that was really the bottom out for me. And I ended up staying in Santa Barbara another 24 hours, completely disconnected. No phone, no TV, no computer. And at that point, if you knew me, you knew that was one of the hardest things I had to do, was to stay back and stay disconnected. And I picked up, I'd happened to bring the book, The Four Agreements, with me. And I picked that book up at in my hotel and started reading. And if you're familiar with the book of the Four Agreements, you or not, by Don Miguel Ruiz, you may understand that the four agreements are, and let me just repeat them again. It's be impeccable with your word. Don't take things personally. Third is never make assumptions. And the fourth one is always do your best. And in that moment, reading the Four Agreements, I'd gotten through the be impeccable with your word, right? And I understood that meant that the little voice inside my head that was calling me not enough and a failure and fat and, you know, all those things, right? Failure as a mother, failure as a wife, failure as a business owner, failure, right? That impeccable voice was really treating myself pretty shitty. Let's just, spell it like it is. And what did I need to do to change that? And I had that awakening, not taking things personally. Got to that point and I thought, okay, I'm taking all of this personally. The fact that my son is having struggles, I was taking that personally, right? And it wasn't. It was his challenge. It was his thing that he needed to go through. My marriage, the fact that we were totally disconnected, I was taking it personally. I mean, there was just so many things in my life I was taking personally, relationship with friends and not being invited to things. I'd gotten through the 2 chapters and I had a moment in this quiet where I was called to go to church. And it was just one of those inner knowings, right? You just, it was about 5 o'clock. I just felt, all right, I needed to do something to get in that space of spirituality, to be in that place, a safe place with my higher power, who is God. And I found a Catholic church at the time in Santa Barbara, and I went. I've written about this church before. And it was already dark out. It was November, so obviously the time had changed. And I sat in that church and the priest started in on his homily. And while he didn't mention the book, The Four Agreements specifically, everything he talked about were these 4 agreements. Not taking things personally, being impeccable with your word, never making assumptions, and doing your best you could in life. I mean, it was like, I still have no explanation for it, right? But it was something I was meant to hear. It was meant to be reinforced. It was meant to, for me, for my higher power, God, to say, I've got you, I'm with you, I'm walking this with you, right? So the tears started flowing in the church. Not quite that huge sob, but just knowing that he had my back. I went back to my hotel room and I continued reading and got through the remaining 2 chapters, or two areas of the not making assumptions, never make assumptions, and how I was making assumptions about things in my life, about people in my life, about myself. And then this idea of always doing your best. And for me, the way I have interpreted that is, in those first 3 things, the being impeccable with your word, not taking things personally, and never making assumptions, those are hard things to do on a regular, daily, weekly, minute by minute basis, right? And I needed to do my best to live in that space 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, right? I made that commitment to myself before I left Santa Barbara that Monday morning. I knew that was something that had to change. It had to shift. And And I drove home along the ocean, praying on that, meditating on that, thinking on that, and knowing that the only thing I could do at that moment was take care of me. And that's where it started, ladies or gentlemen, whoever's listening. It started in that commitment to myself to make a change and make a shift in my life, because I knew if I didn't save myself, that I was not going to be worth anything to anybody. I needed to release my son and trying to fix him. I needed to release my marriage and trying to save that. I needed to release the weight. And that's where it started. And I don't tell that part of my story very often, because that big ugly cry is not something that's very pretty at all. But I've been there and I've done that. And I continue to do it every day as far as living those 4 agreements, some days better than others, living in my yes, I can, releasing what I can release, and working on only the things that are my responsibility. And believe me, as somebody who, has gone through codependency, that is something that I have to do on a regular basis as well. And that coming back from that trip and making that commitment to myself was then where I was led into a visualization exercise the following weekend with Rita Black, all about my body and visualizing my healthy body and what that looked like. And 2 weeks later, that Sunday before Thanksgiving at the all-women's gym in Torrance, California, where I was on a treadmill and there was nobody else in that gym. And as I'm trudging along at 200 some odd pounds and completely uncomfortable in myself, a woman walked in and I could see her in the mirror that I was facing on that treadmill with that black sparkly t-shirt that says, "One woman can." One woman can. And that's exactly how my yes, I can moment was born. So it started with that big ugly cry, and it moved to the breakthrough for me, right? There's been many times in my life where I'm on that verge of a breakthrough, and you got to go through that cry. You got to go through the work. You got to go through understanding, where you're at and who you are and why what's happening is happening or not, right? Because we don't always know. But, kind of goes back to one of the other phrases my coach loves to share or loves to ask. And that's, what are you pretending not to know? And in that moment, when I was in Santa Barbara and I was asked to check in, I still was pretending not to know a lot. And in future retreats, actually, that all came out. But it was the first step. It was the first step. So I want to encourage you to, as you're moving into the end of the year here and you're looking at where you want to go and what you want to do for the year ahead, how you want to celebrate the year that you're ending, what is it that you need to have that big ugly cry about? What is it that maybe you're pretending not to know? Is it potentially that your marriage is over, which a couple of years later became very clear mine was, and ended in a divorce? Was I pretending not to know that my son, just needed to do his thing and be himself and work through it himself? Yes. And did he? Absolutely. And is he thriving? Yes. Praise God, he is. The magazines and the business I had at that point, I sold and let go because there was value in that and value in me. And I fully stepped into the coaching to be able to help other women live that yes, I can. And the weight. I lost the 75 pounds at that point. It dropped off. I mean, I literally released the weight on my shoulders, the weight on my heart, the weight on my head, and the weight in my body. For me, that's where it started. And well, yeah, I've put on a few pounds here and there, and it goes up and down still. I'm not where I was. I'm more aware of it consciously. I am living in that yes, I can. So I try to be in that space regularly, and I use all different kinds of resources in the Yes, I Can program that I created, the Yes Method, because that's what gets me through on a daily basis. So yeah, you may have had the big ugly cry, or that big ugly cry may be right on the edge, and that's okay. If you need somebody to hold the space for you, I'm there. There's other people in your life. Be careful who it is, because there's only certain people who really have earned the right to be there for you, for that big ugly cry, for that revelation, for that aha moment, for that life-changing moment when you realize that it's all about you, how you treat yourself, how you talk to yourself, how you love yourself in that moment. So anyway, we'll see if I have another big ugly cry. I'm sure there's one in the future. I know I have the people to be able to hold that space for me, to be able to have that big ugly cry and be okay and get whatever revelation it is I need to have through that. So don't mean this to be a downer podcast. It is just meant to share with you the transparent, hard truth of where I've been, where I've gone, where I'm continuing to go, right? Because I put my pants on one leg at a time, just like you. I am vulnerable and transparent, and I walk my talk every single day. And if there's something I can do to support you in that, I hope that you listen to these podcasts. I hope you get your daily yes, yourdailyyes.com. If you need that daily inspiration, join the Yes I Can Women's Collaboration Facebook group, to get regular, consistent life and business tips and support and camaraderie and community, right? It's all about community. So that's this week's podcast. I hope you have a great week. I hope that you are championing and challenging yourself, and that you're looking at how you're ending 2022, moving into 2023, and what some of those big life goals and business goals are for you. All right, until next time, we'll see you soon. Take care and have a great day. Bye-bye.